and welcome to Spotlight on Local Artists, presented to you by Charlotte County Libraries and History. I'm Judy Domzalski, and joining me today is local artist Laura Pickell, who paints in different artistic styles using oil paint. Laura, welcome today.
Thank you for having me.
We've actually known each other for many years since your son was probably very little.
When I started this whole project, yes.
Yeah, definitely. And share his name.
Oh yes, Peyton Pickell.
And why did you name him Peyton?
Because he's the best painting I ever did.
Excellent. Lovely. Nice touch.
And surprisingly, he's a very good artist as well, so I'm very blessed that he got that talent.
That is good to know. He was always such a nice boy coming into the library. It was a real pleasure helping you out. How did you first become interested in art as a career?
Honestly, I think I was just born with it. By the time I was 8 years old, I was already sketching, doing pencil on paper, and I stayed with that technique for many, many years until almost 30 years old when I started experimenting with paint.
What brought you to oil paints in particular? Because that's pretty much strictly what you use in your artwork.
Well, I started out with the acrylic paints. I wanted to know what the texture, transferring from sketching to painting is a very challenging experience. Two totally different ways of doing it. On how it hits the paper, how it blends. Just needed to experiment with it. So acrylics were a wonderful way to start out because of the texture, because it has a thickness, and of course they're less expensive to buy, so you can experiment and mess them up more without high costs. And we moved over to acrylics, and then for value's sake, simply moved on to oil paints.
When we were talking earlier, you mentioned about the layering of the oil paints and the drying time that was involved. Can you explain the difference between acrylic drying time and oil?
Absolutely. Well, I started using the acrylic paints because of the thickness and the texture, and oil paints having the same thickness and texture, it kind of gave you the familiarity of being able to feel the same when you're doing the painting.
Oh.
But with acrylics, they dry almost instantly, and they're water-based. But oil paints take a lot longer to dry, but they have the same texture.
Okay.
So a technique that I developed for myself that works perfectly is simply doing a background. I call it layering. I'm not sure what the actual thing is, but I call it layering, where I'll do just the background, and then let it sit for a couple of weeks, let it get a nice, completely dry, and then I'll move on to putting something on top of that, and then letting it dry, and then on top of that. And it gives it an interesting dimension to it when you look at the final project. The painting behind us, exactly, perfect example of it.
Yes, there's a whole lot of depth in there. You almost feel like you could walk into that painting.
Well, thank you. Yes, and that's exactly what I was trying to go for.
Yeah.
And I discovered with this layering process, which I'm sure has been around forever, but I feel like I invented it, worked really well for me, as opposed to some people can sit down and just do a painting from beginning to end. And that wasn't my style. I wanted to do what worked for me.
So from beginning to end, when you're creating, let's say the middle one here, how long would it take to have that good to go?
It's completely on my mood. If I decide to take a different direction with a painting, and that's the nice thing when you're painting from your imagination.
Yeah.
You can say, oh, I decided not to go with that after all, let me do this instead. So I could take one painting and finish it in a month or less, or I have some paintings that I started and then I did a background and then forgot about them for a year. So it's all about what I felt on that painting.
So you're more of an emotional painter.
Definitely. It
Yeah.
goes completely by feeling. Or I can see something that stimulates my mind, and I go, oh, I would love to paint that. And of course, by saying I want to paint what I'm seeing, I'm going to paint my version of what I'm seeing.
Exactly. What styles in painting are you most drawn to?
Well, there's so many labels, and I'm
know,
not
yeah.
familiar with all the correct terminologies. But I've been told that I seem to go with more of a surrealism, fauvisms, and even abstracts. They're always they definitely tempt my brain.
So when you start out with a painting, do you have an end game in mind, or you kind of let it develop itself?
I actually do both.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I just go into a painting and just start with a blank canvas and just go, what colors do I feel like putting on it, and then create from there. Other times I might see something, for example, the Sitting Alone, an idea, a picture, a photograph of something, perhaps on the internet or whatever, and then I'll go in with that idea, and then I'll go from beginning to end with that one. So that's the nice thing about art. You don't have to be one way or another. You don't have to decide it's going to be this way or that way.
Exactly.
You can, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can just go in, and then the most fascinating thing is that people really like it.
Well, that's what you really desire, of course. That's what you're
Absolutely.
appealing to.
Well, and when you're painting, you also need to go in with realistic expectations. If I paint this picture, would it be marketable?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you have different categories as well. Some, you have your artistic nudes, but you can't exhibit them everywhere. You can't sell them everywhere.
That's true. Yeah.
You want to paint animals? That's fabulous, but there's not as much of a market for it. So you have to kind of do the business and the art together.
Very true.
Supply, demand.
Yeah. You are an artist that often includes people in your paintings. Not all artists are comfortable doing that. Do you have artistic models that you use?
I really don't. Most of these things just come from my mind, other than myself. I am my own model. I do use myself a lot in my paintings. They're not realistic. And I always try to explain to people when they talk about, can you do people? I'm like, yes, but it's not going to look like a real person when I get done. It's going to be artistic or cartoonish even, for description purposes.
Yeah.
But it's not a realistic style. I don't do a realistic style. That's what photographers do for realistic.
Are there other artists that you admire who have an influence on your work?
Absolutely. The most important, most influential artist ever was Frida Kahlo.
Oh.
I admired her way back when I first found out about her, and I studied a little bit on her. Then they came out with a movie, and then I got to watch the movie on top of it.
Yeah.
And her artwork just is so, I feel so connected to her and her artwork that it really does inspire me to go my own way, and it's okay to go outside of the boundaries and even do things that might not necessarily be acceptable in society today, just like back in her day, where her being a strong-minded, independent female back in those days was completely unacceptable.
That's right.
And she was just so inspiring to me.
So much passion in her work.
It really is.
Another painter that painted through emotion, I think.
Yes.
I can see that in your work as well. A fascinating biography on Frida.
She is really, I mean, if you ever need an inspiration to becoming an artist, if you have that passion type of art going on, wonderful person to look into and examine for inspiration.
I'm always fascinated to know there is always an artist in the back of somebody's mind when somebody is working in, doing art as a career. And I had a few in mind for you. Frida was one of them, but I can definitely see that in your work as well. That's great. Are there any recurring themes that you like to explore in your art?
Basically, I just think of what might be marketable, honestly. You know, I'd like to do what my passion wants to put on canvas, but I have to be realistic about the fact that I have to also be able to sell it and make it desirable for something that someone might want.
Gotcha.
I used to love to paint wild animals, you know, safari type of animals. But I realized that there was no market for it, even though I enjoyed painting them. Now I have a whole closet full of unmarketable safari animals that I just enjoy for myself. But I have to find what, again, it's got to find what's marketable and what people want and what I can create with my passion so that they interfold with each other.
It sounds like you've got a good grip on the business end of painting, which is sort of unique for this area. You know, it's that you can have the creative side and the practical side as well, which doesn't always go hand in hand. So taking that question a step further, since you live here in Florida, and it is a place of, you know, winter residents and full-time residents, all kinds of different ages, what do you feel is the public interest in what they're looking for in works of art?
I've actually did a little bit of research, and surprisingly, a lot of beach themes are extremely popular with perhaps the older population,
right?
Or even to like for people who have like residents or even hotels or anything like that. You want to try to get into something like that that is going to be borderline generic, but at the same time eye appealing, that you can get it into. So you're going to find for the older people, you're going to find beach themes and, you know, things like that. For your younger, about 20 to 40, you know, more abstracts seem to be more interesting to them, or even contemporary. Sadly, I don't do contemporary, but I would like to learn how to do contemporary. It seems to be more in that. And that's what I've discovered about Florida. You have so many different type of desires and the different types of age groups.
Exactly, yeah.
That you just have to figure out what you want to shoot for and tie it together with your own passion and what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be just business. You want to do what makes you feel good, somebody wants.
Yeah. And you still want some pride in the end result as well.
Absolutely.
You know, even though you're catering to taste like beach scenes and that kind of thing.
But you want to put your own special twist on it that somebody else won't do. Now look, I just got another idea for another painting. Thank you, I appreciate that. And that's how that happens.
So do you paint by commission as well as, or do you make the painting and then sell what you have?
Well, when I first started out, I was just making paintings and then selling, I'll call it off the wall.
Right.
I did start doing commissions for a little while. Sold, I'm going to say loosely, about 5 paintings on commission. Didn't feel like that was something that I enjoyed. It felt too commercialized. Did not feel like what I wanted to do. So I kind of let that go a little bit, and then I went back to putting in my passions to something that someone might desire as much as I'm feeling the passion on.
Yeah. What exciting projects are you working on at the moment? Do you have anything in the works?
Sadly, no.
Oh.
No, my closet was too full, and I have to wait till I get the closet empty. Luckily, I'll be coming on exhibit here shortly in March, and I'm also actually at the courthouse in Punta Gorda on the first floor as a semi-permanent artist there now.
Wonderful.
they're not involved with the Art in Public Places program at this time, but they were gracious enough to just let me keep my paintings there. So I'm hoping in maybe March, when I have most of the paintings out of the house, then I'm going to start new projects. Until then, I have no more place for storage.
So long-range plans and projects, how do you see your style developing in the coming years? Are there any other projects that you'd like to work on, any other media that you would like to explore?
Well, my biggest newest thing that I really started getting into is the larger paintings. I was originally doing the standard 16 by 20, and then as time goes on and people's tastes change, the 36 by 48 has become the most popular, and that is my actual most recent change, doing larger paintings. And they actually seem to interest people more, as well as the latest style of not framing them, which was kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, that developed over the years.
Yes,
too.
that's just been recent over the past few years.
Yeah.
So making larger paintings, frameless, so that also consists of painting the edges, being creative on painting the edges, and even maybe coming up with some new ideas. I have 3 paintings that I could easily put down on canvas, but again, I'm just holding off until I have room to put them down.
Fantastic. How many days a week do you typically paint? Or is it as you feel?
It's totally as I feel. When I sit down to do a painting, or at least for the first layer, as we discussed the layering, it's almost like getting into a zombie mode. You get into it, you start painting, you lose complete track of time. You don't remember to drink, you don't remember to go to the bathroom, you don't remember anything. You're just so focused for hours on this and on this canvas. And you can't walk away until you feel that you're satisfied exactly where that first layer is, where you want it to be. And in that zone, it could take hours of doing that. And then you let it sit for a couple weeks, let it dry up, and then do it again.
How difficult is it, you know, if you look at one of your paintings in progress and you think, I don't like that, I need to fix that. I'm always curious about that part of it. Is it strictly cover up that?
I found a way to erase. That's why I'm laughing. I found a trick on how to erase on oil paint, even after it's dried. I take paint thinner and a Q-tip, and I just start going at it. And then I start with the paint to go back over again. And I don't have the painting here because I forgot what paintings I had. My kayaking at sunset was a perfect example on one that I had to fix, I'll call erasing. And that technique worked really well. I didn't think that it would work, but it's using a paint thinner and a Q-tip and then going at it, and then one little spot that I don't like, and then repainting it. Of course, matching the paint colors is ideal.
Yeah.
If not, then you have to go through and match the whole thing through.
So it sounds like you're almost a hands-on trial and error kind of person.
Well, that's how you learn.
Yeah, it is. But those are your best learning.
Yes, you have to
habits,
learn from
really.
trial and error, absolutely.
So I think you've already mentioned to us that our viewers can see your artwork at the courthouse in Punta Gorda.
On the first floor in the courthouse.
First floor of the court. How many paintings do you have there?
Oh, many.
Oh.
I'm going to at least say 10 to 12.
Fantastic.
And when March comes, I also rotate. So when March comes and I bring in paintings here, and then I will also refresh the paintings there as a get everything out of the closet type of thing.
Fantastic. And of course, Laura will be showing here at Mid-County during the months of March and April, 2 good long months.
Yay.
And so please stop by and see her work. It's really worth the visit. Or if you wish, you can get a preview of Laura's artwork on her website, which is
www.laurapickell-art.com.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. It really has been exciting.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.